Morning, Bhante Bodhi.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bhante.
Good morning.
Vandami Bhante.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. It's 7 a.m. on the West Coast and 10 a.m. on the East Coast. We want to welcome you all to the morning session of our second day of the Brahma Vihara retreat. We're really happy to have you all here with us today. It was great yesterday, and we hope today will be just as wonderful and meaningful. We are recording all the talks during the event, so if you miss anything, you can catch it later. Reminder of a few housekeeping issues. You are muted upon entry because it's a large event and we don't want crosstalk. Questions can be offered using the raise hand function, and that's different places on your computer. Sometimes it's in your reactions menu, sometimes the participants list in Zoom, or there are three little dots at the extreme lower right hand of your screen, and teachers will address those questions in order. Please unmute yourself if the teacher calls on you. And please keep your questions short and to the point. This session will last an hour and 20 minutes, and then we'll have a break and we will announce the intervals and session start times as we go along. So now we will have some words from our founder and chair, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi.
So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second day of the Brahma Vihara retreat. And today we will be focusing on the development of the second divine abode, the second Brahma Vihara, which in Pali is called Karuna, and which we translate into English as compassion. Okay, now in the four Brahma Viharas, we could say that the root and foundation of all of them is the first one, metta, loving kindness. And so loving kindness is sort of, to be characterized it very concisely, it's the wish for the well-being and happiness, for the welfare and happiness of all sentient beings, oneself and others. And so loving kindness is moving in a forward direction, wishing the well-being and happiness of others. But the plain fact is that many people, many living beings, almost everybody who is alive, who comes into existence, meets with suffering in various degrees, from the most severe, most debilitating, most excruciating, demoralizing, obliterating forms of suffering, to the little irritations, annoyances, and disappointments of everyday life. And so the appropriate response when loving kindness encounters those afflicted with suffering, then it spontaneously and naturally turns into compassion, the wish to alleviate their suffering. And when loving kindness encounters those who are in states of joy, happiness, gladness, delight, then loving kindness gives rise to the third Brahma Vihara, which is altruistic joy, or sympathetic or appreciative joy. And so we could see loving kindness moves straight ahead. When it meets one kind of condition, that of suffering, it makes the turn to the left and becomes compassion. When it meets those who are full of joy and happiness and success, it makes another turn in the other direction to the right, taking the form of altruistic joy, empathic joy. And so today we're going to be focusing in the development of compassion, which is rooted in the perception of suffering, the recognition of suffering. And you can see that compassion has a very intimate relationship with the whole structure of the Buddha's teaching, because the foundation of the Buddha's teaching expressed in the Four Noble Truths, the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha or suffering. And so I would say that when we look at the four Brahma Viharas, particularly comparing compassion with loving kindness, I would say that in compassion, the element of wisdom is more prominent, because it's through wisdom that one sort of digs beneath the surface of life and looks at the underlying suffering, disappointment, dissatisfaction, stress, and so forth. And through that perception, which is exercised by wisdom, when that perception exercised by wisdom strikes upon the heart, then it arouses, it generates compassion. But in the practice of the Brahma Viharas, we don't want just to rest with the sort of chance arising of compassion when we encounter this or that experience of suffering with these beings or those beings who are undergoing suffering. But we want to deliberately, intensively, and systematically develop compassion. And similarly, as with loving kindness, I explained yesterday, 3 stages: generating, strengthening, and expanding or radiating. And similarly for compassion also, we're going to go through the 3 stages, beginning with the generating of compassion, giving rise to compassion. And I think the human heart, maybe biologically, even through our genes, has a natural tendency to compassion. But still, that tendency to compassion gets overpowered by other deeply ingrained psychological tendencies, so that compassion, when we encounter suffering, it tends to arise spontaneously and naturally. But because of the other tendencies, what happens is that compassion gets overridden or deleted by another tendency, which I call the tendency towards apathy or indifference, or the sense of helplessness, that this is something remote from me, far away from me, something over which I have no control, something about which I can do nothing. I have enough troubles of my own. I don't have to attend to the troubles of others. And in that way, we sort of close off our heart to the suffering of others, even despite that natural tendency to respond to it. And so what we do to generate compassion is to deliberately focus on thoughts, reflections in which we consider the suffering of others. In generating loving kindness, according to the classical texts, I explained that there are different stages or different persons that one works through, starting with oneself, the respected person, the close friend, the neutral person, the hostile person. I found with generating compassion, in my own experience, we don't go through a series of persons like that. What I found to be most effective in my own sort of attempt to develop compassion is to use images of people who are undergoing the different types of suffering. So first, what I did is to make a little list, a little bit like, I'm sorry to say this, like a shopping list of the different types of suffering to which people can be exposed. And then I found, using very efficient Google images, to find photographs of people undergoing those types of suffering. And I've collected them into a file, which we are going to go through as the means of generating compassion. And I have to say two things before I show these images. The images are quite strong, and some people might find them a little disturbing. But first, they're not the most extreme types of suffering. They're not images of the children in Yemen whose bodies are reduced to skin and bones, or of people whose bodies have been mangled and blown to pieces in bomb explosions. But they are quite strong and disturbing. But I think to generate compassion, one has to be willing to face images of suffering and distress. Without that, one will just turn back into the cocoon of apathy and indifference. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing I'm saying, not to the participants in this retreat, but if there are any copyright holders of these photographs, please recognize that we're not using them for any commercial purpose, but they're used with good intention to help us to develop more compassion. Okay, so let us look through this file of images, and I'm going to do, as we go through them, I'm going to be doing the meditation on compassion, and you will be looking at the photographs, but not just looking at them with a normal frame of mind, but putting the mind into the meditative framework. And I'll recite some kind of thoughts that come to me, and you sort of echo those thoughts in your own mind as a way of generating the compassion. Okay, so let us begin. And first of all, take a comfortable and your familiar meditation posture. Again, keep the posture firm, back upright, not stiff or rigid. In this case, you won't be closing your eyes because you want to see the photographs. But when you get the photograph, if you wish, after you get the image, you could close the eyes and sort of follow my reflection with your eyes closed. Okay, so the first type of suffering that I have here is, it's the one quite appropriate for Buddhist global relief, and this is hunger. So here I have an image of a young girl in America. Okay, so take in that image bring it into with your eyes open first. Then if you wish, you can close the eyes or keep it. Oh, I have to, oh, that's right. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I have to share the screen. Okay, so now we have an image of a young girl here in America holding the sign saying hungry. So just so you have some facts below, that 35 million Americans struggled with hunger. More than 10 million children faced hunger on a daily basis. Okay, but bring in the image of this young girl. Then I'm going to generate in my heart the thoughts, I see you. I feel your pain. I recognize your hunger. I recognize your suffering. May you be fed. May you be loved. May you be blessed. Okay, now in just a little spell of silence, generate a heart of compassion towards this girl, letting her suffering sink into your own heart and nurture the seeds of compassion. And in your heart, you can bless the girl. Now we move over to the next image. And these are hungry children in Haiti, a country where poverty and hunger are very widespread. And you could focus on the boy in the foreground. You could see the eager and anxious expression in his eyes. Holding out a bowl to receive food. Take in the other children as well. Then if you wish, you can close the eyes. I feel your pain. I recognize your hunger. I recognize the call of your body needing food to thrive. May you receive food in abundance. May you all be cared for. May you all be blessed. In the silence, generate thoughts for the feeling of compassion. Okay, the next form of suffering that we'll be dealing with is homelessness. Not having a place to call one's home. Also a very widespread problem here in America. I don't know the story behind the picture, but obviously there is a family. I assume the other two children, the boy in the background and the girl with the pink jacket, also are the children of this woman. And from the title, I assume they're registering at a homeless shelter. You can feel the pain of a mother with several children, but unable to provide them with a home. And the pain, the suffering of children not having a home to return to, but having to go to a shelter shared with many, many other people as the place where they live. So let your heart go out to these people, the mother and the children. I see you. I feel your suffering. I feel your pain. May you be blessed to find a home, a nice home for you and your children. May you be blessed. May you be blessed. May you be blessed. Continue in a minute or so of silence to generate compassion towards the woman and her children. Move on to the next image. Again, homelessness. This is homeless children in India, in Delhi. Looks like an older girl and her little sister. In India, in all the major cities, there are hundreds and thousands of homeless people, especially homeless children without any parents. So bring them into your heart. Feel what it's like to be a child living in an Indian city. Every day have to scrounge for food, maybe engage in petty theft or begging. So bring them into your heart and generate the thought, I see you. I feel your suffering. I know what it must be like to be just children, having to live on the streets, no home, may you be provided with a loving home. May you be loved and cared for. May you be blessed. Okay, let your heart resonate for children, with compassion for these children. Next is the suffering of war. So much suffering in today's world. This is Syria. Just last week we had Palestine or Gaza. There's Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen. Okay, but here we have one image. See the agony in the face of the mother. Child apparently is injured. Bring the image into your heart and let it generate the seeds of compassion. Okay, we move to the next. Oops. Here, these are orphans of wars. So here are two orphans from the war in Afghanistan. Look into the eyes of the girl with her baby brother or sister, I don't know. Think of what it's like at such a young age to have lost your own parents, it to a bomb explosion or to gunfire. Maybe you can see these children as being your own children. Then generate the wish, the thoughts. I see you. I recognize your loss. I recognize your suffering. I feel your suffering. May you be loved. May you find a loving family to take you in and look after you. May you be blessed. More orphans, these are the orphans from the war in Syria. I assume this is the oldest sister at the right, I think younger sister on the left, and probably brother in the middle. Again, take them into your heart. Look into the faces and let the seeds of deep compassion spring up in the heart. We move on to the next image. So this is just one image of what maybe hundreds and thousands of families in the United States and millions of families around the world have been experiencing. I don't know if all I know is what's indicated by the text, by the caption, that these are family members mourning the death of a man after his funeral service. He died, he was just 39 years old, and he died from the COVID-19 just about a year ago. And his father had died 2 months earlier. So you could maybe focus on the man in the middle, covering his face, and feel his grief, which is the grief of hundreds and thousands of families, even millions of families around the world who lose loved ones, especially losing them in the prime of life. So just dwell on the image and let the image generate the heart of compassion, seeds of compassion in your heart. Okay, next image. Yeah, this is the image of Breonna Taylor. She was a woman, a medical technician in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, and that's her boyfriend. They were in their apartment this was a little more than a year ago. And then the police, without uniform, ununiformed police, broke into the apartment in the middle of the night, thinking this was a drug den, and they shot and killed Breonna Taylor. So we can't have compassion for her anymore because we need the living person, but we could have for the boyfriend. So what it's like, and it turned out that the police they had the wrong address, they broke into the wrong apartment. And so they killed this innocent young woman. So we have compassion for the boyfriend, what it's like to have your love of your life shot down in your own apartment. And also, though they say we can't have compassion for those who are dead, but it brings us to my heart, it brings a great sense of almost sadness to have a young person shot down just through a careless mistake. Okay, now we come to some suffering due to natural disasters. So this is in East Africa, where people's survival dependent on rain. Whoops. So we can look into the face of the woman with the child. Feel the sense of worry, anxiety, concern as the rainy season arrives. And maybe because of the climate change, maybe the rains won't come. And from this, we could expand the range of the heart to think of all of the people throughout the world who are facing such uncertainty because of the disasters brought on by the changing climate. In some countries or regions, fierce hurricanes and cyclones, destroying their homes, their fields, their towns and cities. In other regions, terrible heat waves and extended droughts. Okay, move on to the next image. This is child sex trafficking in Cambodia. And it's not necessarily the case that these girls are victims of sex trafficking. It could just be a chance photograph. But what I found, Cambodia is one of the worst places in the world for sex trafficking. There are approximately 30,000, 40,000 sex workers in Cambodia, nearly half under the age of 15. And mothers, often they have to sell their daughters to the brothels to feed the rest of their family. It's an agonizing sacrifice for the mother, but she's bound by her poverty and doesn't have any other choice. So in our hearts, we could feel the agony of the mother who has to sell her daughter into the sex trade. And the agony of the girl who become a virtual prisoner in the brothel. Having to service many men per day, no days off. Vulnerable to sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV. And by the time she's in her 20s, early 20s, she's too old and just cast off, discarded. And it's not only humans who undergo suffering. We also have our four-footed friends. So I just took a couple of images of animals subject to cruel treatment. See the dog, look into its eyes. The face looks so sad, as though it's pleading with us for mercy. And then I think this must be an orangutan. Again, locked in a cage. Face looks so sad. And so bring all of the animals into our hearts, all of the animals who are subjected to cruel treatment, whether for the amusement of people or for medical experimentation. Okay, let us now come back to our bodies and drop all of these images and just do a few rounds of mindful in and out breathing. And then you could open your eyes if you've had them closed. And we'll end the session by rubbing the palms together and rub the palms over the face. Top of the head. Back of the neck. The shoulders. And then you can come back, come down to the buttocks, the knees, and if you've been sitting cross-legged on a mat, come to the feet. Okay, I know that I departed from the schedule. I was not unaware of that, but I wanted to go through this whole imagery. So what we will do, we do like about 5 minutes. You could just do a little, I hope this wasn't too depressing. Tomorrow we will have altruistic joy, so we'll have more uplifted spirits tomorrow. I don't like to be a killjoy, but I think when you do compassion meditation, you have to really look at the truth of dukkha, the truth of suffering. Okay, so it's 10:45 now. Let's just do like 5 minutes. You could do some bending and stretching, or a little walking meditation. And then 10:50, we'll come back to the sitting position and we'll do a guided session of meditation on compassion without the imagery. The imagery is just to help to generate the compassion. What do you think? Are we ready to resume?
Yes, please go ahead, Bhante.
Okay, so let us take the sitting position, regular meditation position, with the eyes closed. And settle into the felt sense of the body first. Just taking the body in the immediate present. Then let the mind move to the region of the heart. Settle in the region of the heart. And first we'll do a couple of minutes of loving kindness in a broad general way. And then I'm going to mention some of the main forms of suffering that we just saw in images. And then I'll pause, and in that pause, you work at generating compassion towards people who are afflicted with that type of suffering. Okay, so first start off, we take the entire human population of the earth into our heart, and we generate the wish, may all the people in this world be well, that is healthy. May they all be truly happy. May they all be safe from all harm and danger. And may all their good aims in life be fulfilled. Just work with that for a couple of minutes. Just take people in all the different continents, the different countries, different ethnicities, races, languages, religions, wishing them all to be well, happy, safe. Okay, now bring to mind people who are afflicted with hunger. You could think of a little American girl, or the children in Haiti, or if you prefer no images, just the thought of people living with hunger, and let your mind resonate with the pain and suffering that they face each day through lack of food. We do this for a couple of minutes. Do it on your own in silence. And as you're doing it, you can be with your heart blessing them to be free from hunger. Okay, now we move to those who are facing homelessness. You might think of sometimes whole families, as we saw in the photograph, a woman with several children having to live in homeless shelter, people evicted from their homes because they can't pay the rent. Or you could think of the homeless children in India and in other poor countries living on the streets. And again, let their suffering sink into your heart and water the seeds of compassion. Okay, next, bring to mind the suffering of civilians living in a country which is torn apart by war. Mostly civil war these days. Afghanistan, where bombs can go off in the marketplace, killing dozens or even more people. Syria, the Gaza Strip, and let your heart resonate with the suffering that the civilians face when they lose their loved ones through bomb explosions, through gunfire. And generate the wish, may all war cease, and may people live together in peace and harmony. So that's actually a kind of loving kindness. Let's just focus on the suffering of those afflicted by war. And next, bring to mind the orphans, the children who are left without parents on account of the fighting of war. Could remember the images of those Afghan children or the Syrian children. Could be children in Gaza. Or in some of the African countries. Who bring to mind those orphans and feel the suffering of what it's like to be so young and to have lost one's parents, to be on your own, very much on your own in this world. And let your heart swell with compassion for those children, sending blessings to them. Okay, next, think of all the families who have lost a loved one, or maybe even several loved ones, too early in the prime of life, or even in old age, but while they were still healthy, lost loved ones to the coronavirus. Let your hearts go out to them. Feel their grief, their loss, their sorrow. And then next, feel the suffering of a woman, say a mother in Cambodia or some other poor country, who has to sell her little daughter, maybe 13, 14-year-old daughter, into the sex trade, and feel the terror and distress of the little girl who is taken off to the brothel and forced to become a sex slave. Feel that deeply in your heart. And generate waves of blessings. Hoping for that terrible trade to end. And then send thoughts of compassion out to all of the animals who suffer at the hands of human beings through cruelty. Feel their suffering as your own, and generate the wish that they be free, that the animals be free from suffering. Okay, now come back to the felt sense of the body in the immediate present. And then you can, again, mindfully open your eyes. And then rub the face, back of the head, back of the neck, the lower back, buttocks, knees, and feet. Okay, we could take some practical questions, maybe for about, we could take about 7 minutes of questions, and then we'll have the video. Yeah, I'm glad. I thought after I went through all of those images of suffering that the number of participants will drop down to 10 or 12. But I'm glad to see that almost everybody remained. Okay, so I'm taking them in the order in which we find them. Ashish. Ashish.
Please unmute yourself if your name
Yeah,
is
you have,
called.
yeah, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, I was not able to unmute myself. Okay, my question is again like similar to yesterday's question. So how do we first do metta and then compassion? And let's say if I'm practicing anapanasati, what is the sequence? Like how do I fit in, or is there, do we schedule a separate session for compassion? How do we incorporate?
Yeah, my own experience, I find to do the compassion meditation requires a separate session. Like what I would do, say if I'm doing a session of anapanasati, then at the end I would do like a few minutes of the loving kindness meditation. Of course, people, there's no fixed rule about this, but I just find that to develop the karuna, compassion, it needs a separate session rather than, just fitting in a few minutes at the end of a session. But with loving kindness, it's easier to do, just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that Gita?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay,
Thank you for
please.
teaching us. Thank you. My question is, I find compassion a very emotional
Yeah,
experience.
yeah,
I find myself continuously pouring down with tears because
yeah,
I can actually feel that.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right or wrong, because I can't. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have that experience, and
Yeah.
I do too. In fact, not with tears coming, but very emotionally stirred by it.
Yeah.
I think that's quite natural. I would say it's even a good thing, but what has to be done through practice is to temper compassion with upekkha, equanimity, which doesn't mean apathy or indifference, but it means that one starts to balance the mind out and make the mind steadier and calmer. I think Venerable Jin Chuan will probably be dealing with that in the afternoon.
Especially
So,
when you showed those children.
yeah, I
being,
know. I mean,
oh
yeah,
my God.
yeah, I
It
know.
was just unbearable. I had to
Yeah,
actually take my glasses off and just stop crying.
yeah,
It
I
was,
understand. Yeah, yeah. I have the same experience. Yeah.
thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay. I think two Miriams. So, okay, Miriam A. The next is Miriam in California. Unless I did the same person, I don't. Anyway, plain Miriam, go ahead.
Hello, thank you, Bonte. You like to go by Bonte or
Yeah, Bante, yeah.
Bonte is good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your lesson. And my question is the rubbing of the hands and the face and the head.
Yeah.
What
yeah.
is that, and why
It's
should we do it?
especially after sitting for a longer time, it's to sort of stimulate the circulation again. After sort of the circulation is slowed down a bit through the meditation, and also especially rubbing the shoulders. Sometimes the back of the neck and the shoulders get tense, and to rub the buttocks again, so that if you're going to stand up, you don't stand up quickly, and then you could sort of totter and fall. Yeah, so it's just a practical. There's no spiritual reason. It's really just for practical purposes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then now this is Miriam in California.
Yes, Bhante, thank you for teaching and thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
I had the same reaction as Gita had. I was sobbing the whole time at the beginning.
Yeah.
But then when you weren't showing the pictures,
Yeah.
and I was going through you were going through the sex trafficking.
Yeah.
I started having anger for.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, I know that problem well also. In fact, I have to confess that I had some hesitancy about including the image of the sex trafficking in this presentation for that reason. And also the image of Breonna Taylor being shot by the police. Also, I had some hesitation about including them because they also tend to generate the anger rather than simply the compassion. In that case, you just recognize with mindfulness that the anger is arising, and then put it aside for the time being and just realize now my task is not to look at this from the aspect of social justice, but to look at it from the aspect of generating compassion.
Okay.
And then on some later occasion, not in the meditative setting, then you might ponder the question, what can I do to help take some action in some way to address this problem of human trafficking? And in fact, if we go to the images, there's an organization mentioned in the image of the sex trafficking. Let me just get that image.
Yes, I took a
It's
snapshot when you were showing it.
Okay,
so.
yeah, Relevant Magazine will have the article. If you look Relevant Magazine and look sex trafficking in Cambodia, you should be able to find out.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay. I say, okay, Phyllis.
Hi, Bhante. Thank you
Yeah.
for taking my question. It's about generating that energy. How can I tell whether I'm generating compassion or empathy? Or does it matter?
I don't quite know the distinction between empathy and compassion. I've heard some discussion about this. I would say empathy maybe is the ability to identify with others. So it's not taking on that particular emotional tone, but you're able to identify with others and to sort of feel the world through the standpoint of others. Then when you're empathizing with others, then when you witness the suffering of others, that gives rise to compassion. And when you witness the joy and happiness of others, that gives rise to mudita, altruistic joy. So empathy is sort of what is at the base of both compassion and altruistic joy, in my understanding.
So does it matter at this stage, doing this compassion generation exercise? Does it matter that I cannot tell whether I'm getting to the point?
I don't think it matters that whether you can distinguish empathy and compassion, but it's important when doing the compassion, ideally, initially one tends to be strongly overcome by maybe sorrow and emotionally moved because of the empathy. But what one has to do as one progresses through the practice is be able to experience the compassion, but to do it within a setting or protective envelope of equanimity so that one is not feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did Yvonne, did you have a question?
Bante, I will wait until later. Thank you, Bante.
I'll only have time to take one more question. Then the others, as I said, don't give up, but keep your question in mind. And in the next session, I think there'll be a Q&A session. Then you could ask the question then. So I see the hand of Mary Ann Harmon.
Yes. When you were guiding us to generate a blessing for these unfortunate situations, it just felt wrong, almost disrespectful. So could you explain the purpose of the blessing? Why we do that?
Why should it be disrespectful? The blessing is sort of wishing the person to be well.
It seems so pointless and so lame, so futile. I guess that's what seemed like we were fooling ourselves to thinking that we're doing something when in effect we're really not.
There are many, many ways that one could do something to address those problems. And that is the purpose of Buddhist Global Relief. But let's say generating the blessing is a way of generating the intention to do something to help people in situations of suffering. It's in a way, it's like bringing in the element of metta, of wishing them to be well and happy.
Thank you.
But it's not enough just to rest with the good wishes, but one also has to take some kind of action.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we will we'll have to end the question session here. And please, the people with questions can save them for the next period, the afternoon period. And please don't leave. Don't think the session is over, because we have very important is really to see the video of what Buddhist Global Relief is doing to alleviate suffering in the world. This is the work of putting compassion into action. So Carla, you will take over.
Yes, I think it is important to leave us with the feeling that we can do something. I think most of us would not be here if we did not have a heart inclined toward compassion. And perhaps you, like me, this was difficult and you have this instinctive reaction of reaching out because you want to do something. Okay, and I think that's a good impulse. I think we need to use our wisdom to find skillful means to reach out and do something. So Yvonne is going to show us a video now from the Garden of Peace project, that the Lotus, is that right, Yvonne? I believe we're on Garden of Peace right now, from Lotus Outreach International, and they empower vulnerable women and children living in poverty. They have a model of long-term sustainable change. They're one of our long-term partners that do wonderful work. I think you will find it very inspiring to see what's happening with this Lotus Outreach International project in Tamil Nadu. It's in Kurumbupalayam in Tamil Nadu, India. Thank you.
At Buddhist Global Relief, we are inspired by the vision of a world in which debilitating poverty has finally been banished. A world in which all have the basic material supports of a meaningful life, including food, housing, and healthcare. A world in which everyone has access to education and the freedom to pursue that which gives their life value and purpose. A world in which all people live in harmony with one another and with the natural environment. We support projects in 23 countries, focusing on 4 program areas. We provide direct food aid to people afflicted by hunger and malnutrition. We train farmers in methods of sustainable food production. We fund the education of girls and women, and we support women's economic empowerment. Each year, thousands of people around the world join our Walks to Feed the Hungry to raise funds for Buddhist Global Relief. For many families in Kurumbupalayam village in Tamil Nadu, India, access to schooling for their children is an unattainable luxury. In this community of subsistence farmers and day laborers, school not only means fees for books, uniforms, transportation, and food, but also deprives families of children's potential help at home and with income generation. The Garden of Peace School, located on a 5.6-acre organic farm just outside of Kurumbupalayam, provides a free education as well as school supplies, transportation, and meals to children in need in this community. Buddhist Global Relief funds the school's nutritional support program, providing 2 meals a day for all 175 students at the school, as well as 15 school staff members. Thank you to all of Buddhist Global Relief's Global Sangha of Practitioners of Compassion and Action. Your generosity supports the children at Garden of Peace and hundreds of thousands of other people in need who are served by our projects worldwide.
Thank you all very much for attending this session. And we hope you will come back this afternoon where we will talk about some important material, I think, given the intensity of the emotions aroused by this morning. We will be covering compassion and its near enemy, sadness, grief, sorrow. So please come back and join us at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific, and we will try to get to everyone's questions in the long run. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bante.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Bante.
Bante.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good rest, Bante.
Okay. Come back in the afternoon.
Yeah. Take a good rest, Bante. See you
Okay.
soon.
See you later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I did. Actually did. Goodbye.